Good evening. My name is John Yater. I'm chairperson of the Planning and Zoning Commission and will be presiding over the Commission's deliberations on hearing items this evening. The Planning and Zoning Commission sits in an advisory capacity to the Town Council and reviews planning and zoning issues and forwards recommendations regarding these important issues to the Council. This evening's proceedings will be conducted using the following format. First, I will read the hearing application into record. Following the identification of the hearing application, staff will present the case and their recommendations to the Commission, after which questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission will be directed to the staff regarding the case. After the Commission initially reviewed the application, the floor will be open for comment, at which time the applicant will have an opportunity to comment regarding the matter and answer any questions. It is at this point that I will open the floor to the general comments from the public regarding the planning case before the Commission. I ask that you direct your pertinent comments to the Commission through the chairperson and not to the applicant, staff, or individuals within the audience. I would also appreciate your cooperation in making your statements brief and to the point, as I may exercise the prerogative to confine public comment, if need be, to 5 minutes intervals per person should there be a considerable public involvement in the case. So with that, I'm going to call the October 10th, 2016 Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Okay, first item is attendance, please.
Commissioner Zurcher?
Present.
Commissioner Dusky?
Kind of.
Commissioner Roberts?
Present. Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Rutherford?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Dreves?
Here.
Chairperson Yater?
Here. Second item is announcements. Do we have any announcements, Commissioner? Okay, let's do that. We're going to have, first of all, go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry.
How we stand. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to serve you and the public here in Prescott Valley. Pray you give us wisdom and knowledge. And again, I want to thank you for those men and women that are protecting our country and our freedom. And we thank you for that in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, are there any announcements? Seeing there's no announcements, we'll start with our public hearing items. Roll call.
No.
Oh, okay. I'm gassed tonight. Let me get back on schedule here. Okay, we approve the minutes for September 12th, 2016. Any changes?
No changes.
All approved? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now, is there any announcements? I want to get to some announcements, I don't understand this. Okay, we'll start with public hearing item GPA 16-004/ZMC 16-006. Upon the application of Slade Investments, a request to Town of Prescott Valley for general plan amendment from community commercial to medium-high residential and zoning map change from C2 PAD, commercial general sales and services, planned area development, to R2-PAD, residential multiple dwelling units, planned area development on approximately 9.5 acres located north of Florentine Road between Commons Circle and Majesty Drive for the development of 198 units, APN 103-31-279. Joe?
Well, thank you very much, Chairman, for that. Introducing that, and Commissioners. The subject property is shown here on the exhibit, and the subject property was part of the original town incorporation. And in 1982, The property was included in a rezoning of 60 acres along the corridor to C2 PAD. Of the approximately 60 acres, 29-acre parcel located north of Florentine Road between Navajo Drive and Majesty Drive was owned by one property owner and was envisioned as commercial center but remained undeveloped. The applicant took ownership of the 29-acre parcel in April of 2005. It plans to develop the property with commercial uses and wish to sell portions for development by individual owners. Under the PAD zoning district, individual development units can be approved by the town council as final development plans, as opposed to establishing fixed lot lines through a subdivision plat. But roadway and utility infrastructure must be established to provide access and services to any individual parcels. A preliminary development plan for Navajo Commons was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission April 11, 2005. And on December 7, 2006, the council approved a final development plan for the 26-acre pad to be known as Navajo Commons, which delineated roadways along with necessary public utility easements on the property. The owner developed the required internal private roadways and private infrastructure in accordance with the plan, and Navajo Commons is served by entrances from Florentine Road and Navajo Drive. On December 7th, also on December 7th, 2006, Council approved a development agreement which provided for the owner making certain interim improvements, particularly like a left turn lane into the project on Florentine Road, and also provided for making a cash payment of $148,000 for the development, future development of Florentine Road when it's widened. The first development, Navajo Commons, was a 9,000 square foot Dollar General store, approved in December of 2009 on a 1 acre parcel at the northeast corner of the northeast corner of the intersection of Navajo and Florentine Roads. The owner now wishes to develop a 198 unit apartment complex on the approximately 9.5 acre parcel located north of Florentine Road between Commons Circle and Majesty Drive. A general plan amendment from community commercial to medium-high residential, and a zoning map change from C2 PAD to R2 PAD are first required for the project before approval of a preliminary development plan. The general plan guiding principle HA is intended to encourage housing development that absorbs existing capacities and infrastructure and support development that is located adjacent or in close proximity to existing utility and roadway infrastructure, and support development that builds out existing neighborhoods and master plan communities. As shown, the land use designation north of Florentine Road is community commercial, west across Navajo Drive, and to the east across Majesty Drive is medium-high density residential. The zoning south of Florentine Road is C2 PAD and mostly developed. To the west across Navajo Drive, and to the east across Majesty Drive, the zoning is R2-3 and R2-4, and mostly developed with duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. Immediately adjacent to the project, to the north, is 4 acre parcel, Zone C2, developed with 37 multifamily units. When it was developed in 1985, residential uses were allowed in commercial district, which is not currently the case. The preliminary development plan indicates that the building locations and heights, along with parking and access configurations. PDP 16004 will permit the development of 3 apartment clusters with 198 total units and 357 parking spaces along with outdoor recreation and facilities on the 9.5 acre site. The neighborhood meeting was held by the applicant on August 18th, 2016, with all property owners within 1,000 foot radius being notified. The neighborhood meeting was attended by 12 people. Of those attendants, 7 were property owners from the notification list, 3 represented the owners of the subject property, and 2 were the project's design professionals. A summary of their meeting was provided for you, and there was 1 letter of objection that was forwarded to you. The proposed minor general plan amendment from community commercial to medium high density residential is consistent with the guiding principles of the General Plan 2025 and appropriate at this location. The proposed zoning map change to R2 PAD is in conformance with the proposed minor amendment to the General Plan 2025 and is appropriate with the limitations set forth in the conditions of approval. Staff reports GPA 1604, ZMC 1606, and PDP 16004, and recommends approval of each with a separate motion as listed. I'm available for any questions. The applicant is here along with his consulting professionals.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, do we have any questions, concerns from the commissioners?
Is the developer here? I do have a question.
Okay.
On Majesty Drive, the accesses that come out are, it looks as though those are security only or emergency only exits.
That's correct. There's no access.
Why don't you give us your name?
Thomas Cack. Thank you on behalf of Slade. The access onto Majesty is just for emergency vehicles, that type of thing.
Then I guess my next question along Majesty would be the drainage that's there now. Is that going to be left as it is, or are you looking to do something in a landscaping manner that will help that?
The drainage will still be where it presently is located, right along Majesty. The expectation is, of course, that it will be changed somewhat for beautification. Along Majesty, there will be a wall. Along Majesty, you have to have a wall anyway, because when cars pull into these parking lots and face Majesty, they have to hit a wall so that they don't shine across the street.
Which side of the drainage will that wall be on?
The wall will be on the outside of the drainage.
The Majesty,
Yes.
next to Majesty Road? Takes care of me.
I had a question.
Okay, thank you. Matt, go ahead.
To either Joe or Mr. Cack, currently, is there any plans to improve Majesty Drive on where the driveways will go into and so forth?
No, there's no driveway. The only entrances into Majesty would be
The emergency access.
emergency only. So there's no plan to
But there's no
improve
improvements
Majesty.
to Majesty whatsoever?
No, because
that-
this project
that
really
is a
doesn't use
concern.
Majesty.
Okay. It's a concern of mine because Majesty is pretty rough. I don't know if that's something that we can discuss further. I travel Majesty almost every day, and it's almost like a one-lane road, and that is a concern of mine.
Two comments. First to, Commissioner Rankin, regarding the drainage. The town's development standards require that they maintain post-development coefficients of runoff, meaning they can't create any more water than exists in a pre-development scenario. They have to contain that water on site, and they have to meter it out off-site, consistent with the metering that occurred before. I'm also familiar with drainage there, and there are a number of detention facilities on the subject property that's going to have to be embellished in order to be able to contain those post-development flows. The other issue about Majesty, the Commission, I'm sure, is aware that the Town Council approved a half-cent sales tax. 3/4 of that half-cent sales tax, 2/3, is earmarked towards road improvements. During the Great Recession, the town of Prescott Valley economized on where they spent money specifically to roads. So roads deteriorated to where they are narrow and the shoulders are broken. You've seen in some areas of town, notably where the chairman of the Planning Commission lives, because we wanted to irritate him, they go in and they put a thicker shoulder. It's called a Maricopa shoulder, which is 4 inches of asphalt along the edge of the road. The next chip seal cycle, they'll come in and chip seal that road. Majesty will receive the benefit of those kind of improvements as part of the accelerated effort by the town to better maintain roads and bring them all back to a 10-year cycle of life. We were to a point where we were ready to lose road bases because they had not been maintained for a long period of time. So those dollars have been earmarked for that purpose, and that would be the basis that the town will move forward to improve those roads. There are other roads in the town that are as part of that maintenance system that have actually been improved and will be deferred over a period of time because they have already been maintained. It's hard to require a developer to do improvements off-site. One, if we don't have a plan in our capital improvement plan which supports that. And the second thing is if there's no nexus, and a nexus would be a direct impact between travel on the road and the proposed development. In this case, you will see no traffic generated by this project on that public street.
So with the wall that's going in and the road improvement there, that wall, that's going to be pretty much eliminate anybody being able to park on that side of the street.
Correct.
Will that then become like a no parking area?
We could administratively do that. We'd have to go to the town council and ask for that condition. If it was a problem, I would do so.
Anything else you'd like to add, Matt?
So just to clarify, also kind of piggyback on Larry's question, it looks like there'd be a landscape buffer before the wall. Is that correct? Or would the wall be before a landscape buffer?
I believe there has to be a landscape buffer before the wall. So the wall will be set back from Majesty a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, John, I'm sorry. I have a question just in general. The recreational facility or the recreational area that you briefly touched on, is there anything you can tell us about that or what the concept is or et cetera? That's a lot of people, and it would be nice to know what they might be able to do on site.
Well, on site there will be a recreation building that has the ability for people to meet and recreation. There'll be several areas for barbecues. We intend to have some outside meeting areas. A large portion of the drainage will be grass. The intent is to have it as grass so people can utilize that. We're also talking about putting a couple gazebos in or shade structures at different locations. I think we're looking at a basketball court. Basketball court. There's a basketball court on there.
Excuse me. Nate, give me your name for the record.
Commissioners, Chris Fergus,
Okay.
the architect.
Okay.
There's plans for gazebos, outdoor barbecuing. There's accessible routes through the project for walking, for use as a walking path. There's, I believe we have playground equipment, bench areas, seating areas, and I can't see but there is quite a few outdoor amenities, as well as, like Mr. Cack mentioned, the community building itself has a kitchen area, potentially. There's a meeting area, computer room, things like that. So there are quite a few amenities here and quite a bit of space set aside for those amenities.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
One last thing. Common Circle. I noticed when I drove out there, Bob Drive is in, apparently gets quite a bit more traffic, but also is in pretty good shape. It looks as though Common Circle, because of no use, is as this project comes into place and is going to get a lot of use because all of your access is going to be off of Common Circle. Is that also Common Circle one of those areas that's going to be improved by the town?
Those are private roads.
Those are private roads.
Bob and the Circle are both private roads.
Because Common Circle already is and I'm assuming that it's just from lack of use, is not in great shape.
There's a lot of weeds growing on it. We looked at it the other day. The weeds on the project have been knocked down and cut back. We're looking at going in there now and doing something to eradicate the weeds that are on the roadway, because that will just, right now it's not really damaged, but it's going to be. And then we'll probably be doing something for the first 18 inches or 2 feet off the roadway to keep the road so the roots don't come down and through. Okay. That should preserve that roadway. There'll probably have to be some road work anyway when we proceed with the project.
Especially by the time that construction and heavy equipment goes in there, I think, in my opinion, it's going to tear up Common Circle pretty good during that period.
We thought we'd do it all with helicopters, but we got to get clearance.
I hear you.
Aha, a comedian. Any other questions from the commission? You have a question, Gary? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I got to ask you, when is, if this is approved, when is your construction plan to begin?
Well, you have to get your lending in place and the plans. It's probably going to be 6 months or more.
Okay, my second question, maybe Richard can answer
More like
this.
10, anywhere from 6 to 10 months.
Okay, the road concern. You say it's a private road. Who maintains that private road?
The property, we do. The association
Okay, so you're
maintains that road.
So it will be adequately taken care of and repaired and.
Yeah, it has to be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, I'll entertain
Thank you.
someone from the audience. Any comments from the audience? Okay, with that, let's go to our next, and I guess we'll have a vote. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion. Motion to approve the GPA 16-004 to go forward to the township, or to the city council, excuse me.
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second, roll call, please.
Commissioner Rutherford,
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin,
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Dusky,
Aye.
Commissioner Zurcher,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Dreves,
Aye.
Chairperson Yater.
Aye. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next item.
We have to go through all three.
We have to have another motion, please, on action item ZMC 16-006.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the zoning map change ZMC 16-006 and pass on to the council.
I'll second.
I'll second.
There a motion and a second?
Yeah, I need a
I'm sorry?
correction.
Just ask the maker to consider the recommendations of staff which regard reoccurring revenue coming back to the town of Prescott Valley, because we're taking commercial property and eliminating sales tax revenue generated from it. It's been a common practice that that recommendation includes a surcharge collected monthly. The other stipulations are also relevant to the recommended zoning map change approval.
I'll amend my second to include those provisions.
Thank you. Dusky? With that, take a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Rankin,
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Dusky,
Aye.
Commissioner Zurcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Rutherford,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Dreves,
Aye.
Chairperson Yater.
Aye. With that, we'll go to our next action item.
We've got one more, don't we?
Oh, we do have one more. Yes, we have
Land
another
development
motion,
plan.
and I don't have that. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the PDP 16-004. Upon the application of Slate Investments, a request to the town of Prescott Valley for a preliminary development plan for development of a complex of 3 apartment clusters with 198 total units, 357 parking spaces, of which 14 are designated for the handicap, along with outdoor recreation facilities on approximately 9.5 acres located north of Florentine Road between Common Circle and Majesty Drive for development of 198 apartment units, APN 103-31-279. Okay. Any questions or comments from the commission?
No, we've discussed it.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve PDP 16-004.
And I'll second it.
Okay, having a motion, a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Zurcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Dusky,
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin,
Aye.
Commissioner Rutherford,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Dreves,
Aye.
Chairperson Yater.
Aye. Now, with that, we'll go to our third, and that's ZMC 16-007. Upon the application of New Horizons Independent Living Center, a request to the Town of Prescott Valley for a zoning map change from C2 Commercial General Sales and Services to RS-PAD Residential and Services Planned Area Development on Lot 1170, Prescott Valley, Unit 4, located at 8085 East Manley Drive, Prescott Valley, Arizona. Joe Scott.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The location is shown here on the exhibit. The property is currently owned by New Horizons ILC, and since 1994 is operated as New Horizons Disability Empowerment Center. The structure of the property was built in 1987 for a plumbing contractor and was based on a residential floor plan, but with extra storage area and garages added. So it looks like a residence from the outside, but it also has required hard surface parking for commercial office uses and other services provided. Property was designated a C2-3 Commercial General Sales and Services at the time of incorporation in 1979. The only immediate adjacent land use is the Mountain Valley Church of God, located on the 7 combined residential lots, which is contiguous to the west and south lot lines of the New Horizons facility. In Prescott Valley, churches are allowed in any zoning district. Across Manley Drive and to the north, across Ashley Drive to the west, is R1L 10 zoning, residential single-family limited. New Horizons is now moving to a new commercial location on Valley Road and wishes to sell the building to the SMART organization with interest in using the property for a combination of a residential mentoring program along with office space for the organization. A brochure from the SMART organization was provided to you for your information. A portion of the building is already set up for offices. Another portion, upon renovation, would have 4 or 5 bedrooms with living room, kitchen, and bathroom. The benefit for SMART is that they can have the residential use and office use in one building with the residential and services zoning. Again, the purpose of the RS district is to provide for orderly, compatible development in transitional areas between residential and non-residential districts, and to establish and preserve areas for those facilities which are especially useful in close proximity to residential areas, while minimizing undesirable impacts of such uses on neighborhoods which they service. The RS zoning, again, district allows R1L single-family uses and also office uses. There was a neighborhood meeting was held by the applicant September 15, 2016, with all property owners within 1,000 foot being invited. It was reported that 5 members of the public attended, along with the applicant's representative and someone representing the possible buyer. Questions were asked relating to future residential use. You provided with all of the correspondence, which we have received in opposition, and also additional letter from SMART organization explaining their program. So the organization now wants to have their offices at the same location, so staff is on site and is available to the residents. The proposed RSPAD zoning district allows office residential uses subject to all town code standards. The residential use is allowed by state law as a group home and town code as a matter of right in any residential district. Staff supports proposed rezoning from R1L10 to RSPAD and the RS zoning district, RSPAD, and that the RS zoning district and allowed uses are appropriate transitional uses between the existing C2 commercial district to the east and the R1L single-family zoning uses that exist within the residential neighborhoods to the north and south. Staff recommends the Commission make a motion to approve ZMC 16007. Representatives of the SMART organization are here. If you have any questions, I'm available. The director may have some additional comments if he wishes.
Richard, could you give us a second here? At the brief, there was no staff member. I don't believe there was a staff member at the briefing.
Are you talking about the neighborhood meeting? That's not unusual.
Okay.
We don't have staff members. The neighborhood meeting process is for people to try to talk amongst themselves. I often find that if a staff person attends those, they become a target. People want to talk with them as opposed to necessarily communicate amongst each other. As a rule, I don't go to neighborhood meetings. The staff, professional staff, can do so at their own direction if they choose to do so. But nobody was there, and oftentimes that's by design.
Okay, very good. Now, any comments from the commission?
Yeah, John, may I? Richard, while you're up there, I've really studied this thing for the last couple of days, including all of the additional information that was provided for us 20 minutes before I had to leave my house to come to the meeting. I have my opinions, but I want to talk a little bit about what our options are so we know before we spend all night discussing this.
Sure.
I'm not privy to all the ins and outs of the new Fair Housing Acts from the state and county, federal, and even the city, town. Do we have an option here? If we go through all this drill and we get all through, do these provisions of these laws and ordinances prevent us from denying this?
Absolutely not. Let me take you through the facts of the Fair Housing Act as it relates to group homes. A facility for housing of non-related people are provided as part of the Fair Housing Act up to 10 people. A couple of caveats. It has to be in a residential neighborhood. They're prohibited from being in a residential neighborhood. They also have to be approved by a state agency in order to be able to have that exemption. What's at play here is the town code prevents residential occupancies unless very specifically located within a structure. A residential occupancy can occur in a C district if it's in the top floor or the back 50% of the building. Given the building configuration, neither of those standards are met. That's the reason why the applicant has moved forward requesting a residential zoning classification. The use of the building for New Horizons or for office facilities for the new organization proposed to use the facility is permitted within the C2 use district. The aspect of residential housing in conjunction with that office activity is prohibited unless rezoned to a residential zoning classification. So I apologize for the confusion about receiving something late. That should not happen, and it won't happen again. But the only provision that attaches to this use is if it is rezoned to a residential services use district, then it is indeed protected by the federal act as prescribed and stated and as exempted in state law, which permits a group home. Now, the same argument, I think, is fair, and I shared this with staff as we were discussing it a couple of weeks ago. Somebody along Manly in an R1L use district can come forward and, with approval from the state of Arizona regarding the components of the group home, can locate a group home in any residential zoning classification in the town of Prescott Valley. There is no regulatory authority by the town of Prescott Valley to regulate or manage that use if it's exempted by authorization by state law. However, the distinction here is the opposite. The town code prohibits residential occupancies in a commercial use district unless above the facility or in the rear and no greater than 50% of the facility. Both those tests not being met, the only way that residential occupancies could occur at this property would be to be rezoned to, as staff has recommended, given the circumstance, an RS use district. If the use is not permitted, meaning the zoning map change is not recommended, then the use or residential occupancy would be prohibited. However, again, the office component could continue as it always has as New Horizons. Questions, clarifications?
Does that mean that the federal provisions, for instance, under the handicap or disabled, don't apply here?
No, because we prevent residential occupancies in a commercial use district. So because you can't do a residential occupancy on that basis, you're not exempt because you can't do a residential occupancy as a matter of right. That's the distinction. The difference is the federal statute says if you've got a residential property, you cannot be prohibited from locating it subject to it being a group home of no greater than 10 persons and sanctioned by the state of Arizona. So if the property stays commercial, the residential component will be prohibited, as currently is the case. If the commercial property stays under a commercial use district, the organization can use this as an office facility, but they cannot house residents as a group home.
And if we approve it, then they can do that up to 10 people. And that, well, everything would be fine, huh?
The town could not exercise oversight by initiating stipulations of the occupancy, the residential occupancy, if it went to an RS. Not dissimilarly, there are provisions, performance standards in the RS related to office activities. We could not, again, stipulate that if it were rezoned to an RS, that it be limited to 5 individuals as an example. That would be against the law.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. And with the, I guess the, what's the word I'm looking for? With the consent, I guess, of the potential new owner, I've got a list of questions that I wonder if I may present.
That would be up to the chairman.
Yes, John. Yeah. Can I do that?
Let's go through everybody else here first.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions from comments?
I have a question for you. Can you give I mean, all around this piece of property is basically R1L?
R1L, yes.
If a group home wanted to go into one of those homes,
Correct.
what could or couldn't be done that we're doing here? Is it strictly because of the office?
A group home would be exempt in any of the surrounding properties as a matter of the exemption provided in state law. That is to say, the property across the street could have a exempt group home as a matter of right without any limitations by the town of Prescott Valley. If it were less than 10 individuals and if it were regulated, meaning licensed by the state of Arizona. With those two caveats, it's exempt from zoning from a town standpoint. The properties across the street could not be utilized for offices associated with this kind of care. They could go through they could have a home occupation, which is described in the town zoning code, subject to certain conditions. There is the ability to further elaborate on residential home businesses through use permits through the Board of Adjustments. But those properties couldn't have both an office as well as residential occupancies as a group house.
Is the town of Prescott Valley currently set up where for, let's say, I'm going to say a normal group home without the offices, does it have to be licensed through the town of Prescott Valley?
Yes, it has to have a business license, and the caveats are 2, no more than 10, and then also regulated or licensed by the state of Arizona. If those 2 things are met, we release the business license and they can continue those activities. Some things that we've encountered in the past, and I don't know that's in play in this instance, but people have moved in as a residential occupancy as a group home, and some of the people that they're giving care to are not ambulatory. So as a result of that, it triggers a bunch of building safety requirements regarding exiting requirements, lighting, and those kind of things, which if people don't see it coming and know about it up front, they open up business and they find that they can't actually conduct that business because the structure is not something that can be changed to the extent to meet a commercial standard for people who are not ambulatory. So we've run into that in a couple of instances, and those folks, because the standard is a higher standard, have elected to move to commercial use districts.
Okay, Matt?
Richard, how many group homes in town do we have of this type that you're aware of?
I won't categorize this type, but I'll say we have over 40 group homes in the town of Prescott Valley.
How often is community development getting complaints on such homes?
We used to get a lot of complaints on group homes. Fewer now, probably because we have a better process for informing property owners what they need to do in terms of getting licenses and things. People would occupy a structure and not go through the proper licensing, and then we would be engaged. So it was typically through a complaint. We oftentimes, because as part of the permit through the state, there's a requirement for sign-off by the fire marshal, and oftentimes we get information from the fire department regarding these kind of occupancies, and that's when we start to engage building safety and go in and look at what kind of tenancy is in the building and how things may need to be adjusted in order to be able to meet the building code. There has been proposals for legislation in the past. You might remember we've brought forward some regulatory aspects in the town code. Those things have been stricken down by either interpretation of the federal legislation or in turn interpretations by the Attorney General. And most recently, if you recall, we tried to regulate short-term housing with some management strategies, and the state legislature told us with a bill that we couldn't do that. So 2 months after we came before you, we came back and said, never mind.
I remember. That's why I asked my questions, Richard.
With the requirements that you have that they have to meet, what do you, with that many potential occupants, what does the town require as far as parking?
They have to show that they have on-site parking for the clientele. Oftentimes when we're talking about a group home, people are not necessarily driving automobiles back and forth, 10 residents. They have some sort of shared not parking, transportation arrangement. Some of the facilities I'm familiar with treat people who have disabilities, and because of those disabilities, they have to have handicap access and things like that, or they may go pick them up and bring them to their place of residence to take care of them. And if they run into an overnight stay and things like that, there are other building safety rules that would apply as opposed to just a day occupancy. And again, I'm not going to get into that. It's really not applicable here. But the town standards and the tests that we have to show is, one, is it a residential zoning classification? Because then it is protected. If it is a residential zoning classification, they have 2 criteria. And that is, they have a business license, which is issued after they give us their license through the state of Arizona, at which time we are prohibited as a municipality from regulating that use up to 10 unrelated individuals.
My last question, and you may have already answered it, but so it's clear in my mind, should this new business that comes in for some reason decide that they're no longer going to occupy it for what they're doing, by us changing it to residential service, would a new person be able to occupy the entire building as commercial, or would they be would they have to, with it being residential service, they can use it as commercial or
If it's residential service, there are limitations on the commercial component, but you can have residential occupancies as a matter of right in an RS or residential service use district. Case in point, we just approved, or you just recommended approval of a zoning map change for a large apartment complex. So in an RS, apartments are permitted by right. And in a commercial zoning classification, any residential occupancy other than the two conditions that I described are prohibited.
I think that all of my questions have been answered, but I was concerned about what could come in after this business vacates.
Richard, I have a part two to Matt's question, and that is, how many group homes do we have that sit so close to a commercial? If we were to approve this,
I'm really not able, without doing some research, to give you specifics. Most of the residential neighbors, or the residential group homes that I'm familiar with, are in residential neighborhoods. Okay. And they seem to gravitate there. There are a couple of standards that apply, and that is, again, depending upon the occupancies and how the state licenses, certain homes have to have 24-hour supervision because of the type of clientele that they're taking care of. Others don't necessarily have that. I know that there is legislation that was proffered by the state, recently passed, that enables us to look at it in a different light. We've elected, because of concerns about the Disabilities Act, the federal regulation, we've been concerned about wading into that. I've been told by the sponsor of that legislation that we should. The leadership, meaning the council at this point in time, hasn't given me that direction. Our town attorney has been very cautious, and we're going to let the city of Prescott play it out and see what happens before we touch it. It's something that will be controversial.
thank you, Richard.
I'm also, again, available if you have questions throughout the process.
Hit me with your best shot.
No, not at all, John. Thank you. And to the folks who are attempting this change, I want to make my position clear. I'm not in an adversary position here. I'm trying to find clarification and an explanation to a couple of what I thought were very sincere and very compassionate letters regarding their concerns about this facility. I took the liberty to look into SMART a bit, and I can't find anything. I went on the website that's on the brochure, and it's there, but there's nothing there, and there's no way to access anything on it. I don't know who's behind it. I don't know why they're behind it. I don't know what their intent is. I know what they say in terms of their services to the girls or the ladies or women, or however you want to put it. I found from one source that there may be some connection to the Mingus School, which is highly accredited. But I just don't know what really is behind it. So with that, I'd like to just ask some questions and ask somebody from SMART, if they will, to clarify, I guess is the proper term that I'm trying to reach to, and explain to all of us what this really is, so that the neighbors know, and et cetera. I guess my first question.
Well, let's wait.
Pardon me. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You're ready to go, aren't you?
That's right. I walked up here getting ready to answer questions.
Go ahead
I
and give us your
thought that
name
was
for
the
the
easiest way to approach
Mr.
it.
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Ed Houston, part of the board of SMART. The reason you didn't find much on our website, I'll address that one first. We're a small organization that does a lot of service to these young ladies. You're right, there is a connection with Mingus Mountain Academy. We've been serving off and on different people as an organization for about 17 years. Some of us have been involved there at Mingus Mountain Academy, visiting the girls on campus. We are a faith-based group, so we help provide worship services to the girls on weekends there on the campus. We do some tutoring to the girls. My particular background's in engineering, so we provide tutoring in math and science areas. A lot of the girls need that kind of help in school. We helped this summer to open a brand new science lab on the campus there in their new school that they opened a few years ago. So we do those kinds of things. We don't put a lot of time into the website, so that's why you didn't find too much there. We're really more busy about doing things with the young ladies. We do those things on campus as well as just being friends. Many times these young ladies, now these are all minors. I want to make sure that distinction is clear up front here. They're all minors while they're at Mingus Mountain Academy. We would not be working with any minors at all in this home we're talking about on Manley Drive. This would be completely adults. These are people who have been maybe in treatment in the past. We've met them. Sometimes they've been out on their own for years and just need a place to get started again. And so this provides a place for them to live, maybe to finish school, whether high school or college, depending where they are, as well then to get jobs, help to learn financial responsibility, saving money, so they can move on, and as soon as possible we can move them out to their own independent living. That's a little bit about what we do. I don't know if I've answered some of the questions. I'll start there, but then receive your questions before I go on too long. Okay, we have one prompting here. Yes, we also have part of our work, as you saw from the brochure, is in what we call aftercare for some of the young ladies who want to stay in touch after they leave there from Mingus Mountain Academy. We will go out and visit them. I'll be back in Michigan again next week. I was up in Seattle about 2 weeks ago visiting some of the young ladies to see how they're doing. Again, encourage them in their schoolwork, help them find jobs. We've helped them look for places to live in their own neighborhoods, help them get work, help them finish school, more tutoring if they need that. I'm doing some calculus tutoring out in California right now where I live. So those are some of the things that we do. It's a wide, perhaps very broad and thin. Not a lot of young people are involved with. It's within probably just a couple of dozen at the most. But one of the things that we found through all of this work is that we need to provide some place where some of these young ladies can have a place to live. They just have trouble. They're either at home and families are not functional, and so they don't get support there. They try getting out on their own. They're living with dysfunctional peers sometimes, and we want to provide something better than that. And we think a home where they can get started and make that change that they want to make will be something very important to them. As we've said in our literature, they're all there voluntarily. There's nobody who's mandated to be here at this home. We accept them voluntarily. We're not mandated in any way to accept anybody or any type of person or to reject any type of person. These young ladies are just those that we will vet very carefully, and then we will make sure that they're the ones that we want to have in there. We will have a contract with each young lady or young family that's in there. Some of the young ladies are married. We might have a couple in there. We will vet them very carefully, have contracts with them, and zero tolerances in some very key areas. Other questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to present, or you want me to ask these?
If you have the questions, go ahead with it. That's sort of the broad brush over.
They're not intended to be adversarial. I'm just trying to bring out points.
I want to make sure you know generally what we do and where our hearts are. This is all about being a family there to these young ladies.
Yeah, very well presented. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
The questions that I have here, the management and organization of SMART. Mm-hmm. I assume that you're in charge.
Right. We're part of the board. We are a 501c3 organization that has a, what's it called, Arizona business license. We have those things in place. That's how we operate. If you want to, go ahead and talk.
We're incorporated.
Give us your name. We need it for the record.
I'm the treasurer. We are incorporated in Arizona. We do have our 501c3 status. We accept donations from individuals, churches. We work with others. But what we found is, because the way we operate and then we're working around the country and we all kind of work out of our homes and work together, we can't get the grants that would enable us to do more than what we're doing right now. Getting this property will allow us to be that credible organization to get the grants to help these girls. My husband and I just got back from Vegas this morning, where we were working with one of our girls that we've known for about 4 years. We helped her husband get into EMT school. Had to get him all his uniforms, get his books, get him in there, get his shots. He'll graduate in December, and it's moving up. So this is what we're all about. I wanted to address the building codes because we understand with this property, I've already talked with building codes, I've already talked with the fire marshal. We understand that there's a lot of money we're going to have to put into this building in order to get it ready for residents. So the residents can't even come in until probably February. We have to put in fire systems and all kinds of things.
And may I get your name again, please?
Donna Buehring.
How do you spell it?
B as in boy, UEHRING.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, quite a number. But one of the purposes of my questions is to simply bring forth and put on the record the questions that we know we're going to get.
Yes.
So, you were trying to explain your position, and you did it, I thought, brilliantly. And I just want to pursue it a little further here and allow you to do that, and then we'll go from there, okay? We've talked about that, and we have the professional qualifications of the people that are involved. After your explanation, I'm not so sure what you need there in that, but what I'm trying to get at, the training, the professionalism of the people that are going to be running this operation on site. Because what you do other places and away from there doesn't impact our study.
That's right.
And so could you explain that a little bit?
All right. Again, we are a volunteer organization. We don't claim to be professional psychologists or counselors or doctors. We're not providing services to these folks. We're providing, I guess, care is one of the words that's used. We're providing a safe place for them to live. We intend to turn one of the rooms, if you've been there, that small room toward the front, into a little computer room where they can do schoolwork. So we'll have almost kind of a little school there. We'll certainly provide tutoring to them. We have a list of various things, what we call life skills, all the way from making healthy relationships to anger management, to finding jobs, to schooling, making sure that they understand, how to be a student at school and get their studies done, some of those disciplines that they've just never been taught. And we want to help with those kind of things. So it really is more being parents to them sometimes, that sort of thing. And that's why we're not professionals. We don't want to put any false ideas that we're professionals in any way there. We're there to help them as caring older adults. You want to add something?
Our qualifications are from our business lives. Both my husband and Ed are engineers, and I'm what I laughingly call a recovering CPA. I no longer want to do taxes, but I've been an entrepreneur for a long, long time, and some of the things a lot of the things that I can teach these girls, and I'm the one that's going to be running the facility. I can teach them how to budget, how to shop, how to cook. These girls are coming out of their homes and out of the relationships, out of foster care, and they have no life skills. They can't ride a bus, they can't cook, they can't clean. They know nothing. They really do. And our goal is to teach them how to be productive, to take care of themselves and take care of their families. So we use the knowledge that we have, and we have very strong, passionate volunteers that would be willing to teach them along with this. But as far as care, we're not giving them any care. We're providing them some mentoring with life skills. If they do need something, we can take them off-site to somewhere, but we don't provide it.
Do you have somebody, your volunteers, or is someone there 24 hours a day? Where
There will be a house parent, because sorry, ladies, you get enough women together, and there's always going to be a cat fight or two. So we will have a house parent there 24/7. I will be there during the day, Monday through Friday, and then Ed is usually there on weekends.
Carrying on, if I may.
Yes, please.
The volunteers, do they have any kind of particular training for this? And how many current volunteers do you have? That question kind of goes to the sustainability of the project.
Right. The volunteers right now that are involved on a regular basis, I'd say, are under a dozen. We have some folks who regularly come up and help with our worship services on weekends. There's some folks who are passionate about that. We've had others that are involved in visiting the young ladies after they leave from Mingus Mountain Academy and have been involved in them, whether they're down in Phoenix or other places. They're in touch with them by email or phone visits sometimes, but probably under a dozen overall at this point. So that's why, again, it's not something that we want to have that requires a lot of care and a lot of people involved. It's more like a home, a safe place for these young ladies to do what they need to find jobs, to finish school, to start saving money so they can get out on their own.
And your financial support comes from grants or donations?
Donations at this point, and I guess what they call self-funded. We've been providing some of this along the way. As I say, it's been a small operations to this point, and that's why we feel like stepping into this facility, as Donna says, with the building, that gives us that. Right. And we have received some regular support financially from the Heights Church. They've been regular support. Matter of fact, one of the Heights staff is on our board as well, so we have connections through their Hands and Feet ministry into a lot of connections around town.
Heights Church was my next question.
Oh, it was? Okay, all right, good. All right, well, go ahead with the question. Maybe I'll clarify.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, that was it, yes. Yeah,
I was just mentioning that was the next question.
They've been regular financial supporters. They believe in, and again, they've looked at what we do, and like I say, they participate in what we do. They come up, we usually do a nice big Christmas program for the girls up on campus, and they provided music and other speakers and things to those for a number of years.
Thank you. I think that some of these you've already answered, like the resident qualifications for participation. You talk about their volunteers, your volunteers,
yes,
and you vet them carefully.
Absolutely.
And your zero tolerance policy. We talked about the maximum quantity of residents. Mm-hmm. What you may not be able to answer this. What's the duration normally of something like this?
Yeah, we'll learn that too, but our expectation would be probably at least a few months, because we want to make sure too before we, I say the word release, but turn them out to be on their own. That's the problem that they've had sometimes before. They get on their own too soon, and any of us that have had teenagers in the home know that doesn't always work. And so we want to make sure that they have that time. We're watching to see if they're making those good, sound decisions as an adult, so they can get out and be that productive citizen in the community.
One other question. Transportation was brought up.
Want to add something, Jim?
Oh, that's all right. I'll just jump in.
I'm Jim Buring, same last name, same spelling.
Thank you.
Now, I'm also an engineer. I work in the community, a company called Cobham, and I've been worked there 10 years. And we have a home in the community, so I understand the neighbors' concerns. We had the same questions we would have asked if we lived here. What I do want to say is that the intent is not to take the, quote, trouble girls right out of Mingus and put them here. We're trying to we live in Paulden, and we want those girls out there and to spend that initial time. These girls aren't ready to come right out of Mingus Mountain and come into a home with what we want to do. We want family. We want unconditional love, family time, and the gospel. And now they're not required to learn the gospel and to be faith, but it's a faith program. They will be required to participate. They don't have to believe. We can't make them do that. But we are, as Ed said, to vet the girls, but to understand from the neighbor's point, we want girls that are ready to change their life and tired of being on state welfare, state aid, food stamps, WIC, all these things, and that really want to get off that and change their life. We don't want the girls that just say, oh, I want a place to live, we don't want those girls. So as a neighbor, we want girls that are going to give back to the community. We're going to require that they give back to the community. We're going to require that they are part of service efforts in the community. These are all part of our organization's goal and actually part of the contract for these girls will sign. And it, as Ed mentioned, zero tolerance policy, that they can walk and leave anytime they want. We'll get somebody else that does want to change their life. We've worked with United Way. We talked to the director of United Way, and they said there's a huge gap in this community for kids aging out of foster care that need to change their life. There's no place to put them. We aim to, this is the beginning facility. That was another question. Is this just starting? Have we done this before? No, but we've been doing this. Ed's been doing this for 20 years, and we've been doing this for about 6, working with the girls all over the country. So that's kind of where we're at from a bigger picture, to help the community understand our positions.
Okay. How do you provide transportation for these gals?
Most of these women do not have cars. Okay, so we have a vehicle at our disposal. They will not be allowed to drive it. We will drive them. Also, New Horizons provides transportation, and during the day they will provide, if the girls need to get jobs or rides to work, rides to doctor's appointments. So we have that covered. If a girl comes in with their own car, it'll be restricted. They can't just go out and joyride, take trips. They have to sign in and out. So we want to be very careful about that. So there won't be a lot of cars there.
I have a couple more, and then I'll quit.
No, that's it. Go for it.
Security.
Mm-hmm.
Will it be a locked facility, or is there any overall security? I'm not talking about locking down.
Right.
I'm talking about security for the neighborhood, maybe. Security for the girls, maybe.
Mm-hmm. The best way I can think to answer this, we will treat locking doors and things like you would in your own home. At night, there'll be a time when everybody's in, the doors will be locked. If we leave, everybody's out at work during the day, the building would be locked. Again, as you know, the building sort of has two sides to it, that office side that we've talked about already and the residential side. They're not connected internally, and so they would be locked separately. But yes, it would be treated like your own home as far as at night. It would be locked. One of the questions that came up, too, during the community meeting was whether the residents would have direct access to the outside. They won't. We'll have a central hallway that the rooms would access to in that residential side of the building.
Okay, Rick.
Kind of a piggyback question, if you don't mind, Rick.
Yeah.
As you're aware, public safety is a very, is almost paramount when it comes to a lot of planning and zoning issues, especially zoning map change. Mm-hmm. A lot of the concerns that have been expressed have to do with public safety. Right. What provisions do you have in place, besides what you've already mentioned, to ensure public safety?
Well, they've been mentioned, but let me go at them again and then we'll clarify.
Okay.
The vetting is the key thing. It's who you have in your home that determines a lot of how they're going to be. How we watch them with this 24/7 monitoring and the contracts we have with them, and we will get to know them. Again, this isn't, as Donna was saying, not just a place for people to come to live. It's not a motel. We will be engaged. We'll be a family. We will have dinners together in the large kitchen area in the back. We will have kind of a living room area and dining room area in the back. We will do things together there. There's the school area, so they'll study together. We'll help them with the schoolwork as we need to. So it's getting to know them, and we will be, as a family, we will know what people are doing. We'll be aware of that. And again, the zero tolerance thing, if we find somebody's violating one of the rules we have regarding any kind of drugs or anything like that would be dangerous, they'll be out.
Let me follow up on that.
Did that answer the kind of question?
It does. Let me expand on that.
Please.
Because of the opposition, and like I mentioned, a lot of it had to do with public safety. Mm-hmm. Have you had the chance to speak to the neighborhood and discuss this and your assurances on public safety and or provisions?
I was the one at the community meeting we had a few weeks ago and answered what questions we had during that time. And I know that time was cut a little bit short for some of the folks, but we answered what we could at that time. So we certainly want to make sure those are answered. Yes, that's why we're here, and we care about that too.
Well, you mentioned that it would be a family atmosphere. Are you typically in, and let me ask you another question, piggyback on that one. So in the 20 years that you have been in business, been doing this, how many homes do you currently have and do you have any in the area? And then how many do you have in northern Arizona?
We don't have any others at all. This is the first one.
First one, okay.
This is, again, as Donna mentioned earlier, we're kind of to the place in our organization where we have enough commitment to doing this long term. There are enough young ladies that we feel like need this help, that we want to provide that residency that's been missing in what we do. I have one young lady back in Lansing, Michigan right now. I've been texting her this evening about wanting to get into a motel because she's got to get away from the family that she's staying with right now because it's too much noise, folks up half the night, she can't study, she doesn't have any private time just to get the things done she needs to. She's a long way from where work is. We want to solve some of those kind of problems by having a home, transportation, where we can get them out to some of those places. But this is our first step in doing that, but I guess you have to begin somewhere.
And this is your first step here in Arizona or
anywhere?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, kind of go back to a little bit on the public safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned family atmosphere. Is it your intention to be good neighbors? Do you have good, do you have that in your policies to be a good neighbor policy, that type of thing? I'm just curious.
Absolutely.
In terms of neighborhood outreach, et cetera.
Right. Not exactly knowing how we would do that. I was interested in listening to the folks talking before about their, city park areas and the playgrounds and things. Not that we have playgrounds and things, but yes, to maybe have community barbecues. I know where I live, someplace out there in California, they have street parties once in a while where they have, barbecue and everybody brings something, kind of a potluck sort of thing. To have those kind of things would be great. I talked to some of the ladies at the community meeting a few weeks ago and said we would love to have their participation in teaching life skills of cooking or crocheting or things they like to do. We would love to have that involvement, again, as neighbors would do.
One more question. So, and I believe you mentioned it, but I want to just clarify.
Yeah.
So, one of the concerns was people wandering around and so forth in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. They would not be wandering around the neighborhood.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But you did also mention that they can come and go. If they aren't interested in changing their lives, they can just freely leave.
Well, I mean, that would be like a contractual thing. We're saying they're not going to live there anymore. They'd pack up their things, and then they would leave. I mean, they'd be gone. It wouldn't be where they're coming and going.
You're not just going to dump them in the neighborhood, or are you going to transport them somewhere?
No, what I've heard before, we talked to other organizations. We're familiar with a Peaceful Habitation over in Albuquerque that works with women getting out of prison. That's not our condition here, but they have homes similar to that. There's some areas or some groups out in California that I know of, and some of them, they have a kind of a policy. We'd have to look at that. We're not at that place to define specifically yet, but where they provide them a bus pass and $50 and say, go back to your hometown or your home state or wherever it might be. We'll provide you that so you have a little bit to make it for a night or two, but then you're on your own.
Thank you.
But they won't be coming and going if that was part of the question. It's not like they come there a week and then they say, oh, I don't want to be part of this, and then a week later say, well, I want to be part of that again. That's not what's going to be going on. Right.
Thank you.
I personally want to thank everyone, the commissioners, and the people in the audience for their consideration and allowing me to go through this list of questions. It's obvious that I've studied it.
Excellent.
And I wanted the community to know that we care about these kinds of things, and they have real concerns. We've had issues where, you see it in Prescott particularly, where these guys are wandering around outside with a cigarette and, there are 10 of them out in front of a place. And, that's what people think of.
Yeah.
And so that, we wanted to get this on the record. And by doing what I've done here, this is televised. It is videotaped.
Okay.
And it's public record.
Excellent.
It'll be on the town website as this part of this meeting, so people can go there and rehash if they want to and so forth. But we brought out an awful lot of things that I think might have concerned an awful lot of people.
Good.
And we appreciate your consideration and being so honest and forthright. And once again, thanks to everyone for listening to me for so long.
Jim had a comment he wanted to make. I'll give him that mic.
No, I'll just say, Mr. Dusky, we appreciate your actually taking the time and actually looking at this, but we have never used the word group home or halfway house. Those are comments that are assumptions that people make, and I get that. They see this and they think, oh, this is a family environment, Christian family environment that we're going to, like I said, we vet these girls, and so this is a family environment. This isn't by any means in our minds a group home. However, I get the fact that group home is a kind of a term that gets used where you put people that don't live together. But to us, it's not a group home. It's like I say, it's just like a family home. It's just that this building meets our needs, as opposed to buying homes in the neighborhood and doing this.
Maybe you ought to gin up another name for it.
Yeah.
We have another commissioner.
Yes.
I admire what you're doing. I want people to know that what you're doing is good. And I know we have stepping stones that have lived and abused women.
Yes.
They have no problems over there. Maybe some internal problems, but nothing legally.
Mm-hmm.
I was a missionary for Las Vegas, a rescue center in Las Vegas, Nevada, for 3 months, working with teens. I worked actually with adults, so I appreciate what you guys are doing. I really have no concern of the safety because I was in Las Vegas, Nevada, in one of the biggest crime areas there. We didn't have the problem. Why? Because we had supervision there. And that's what I'm really concerned about, the supervision. And also I'm concerned about when the women come, they're there to help them, to have help and need. Now, they come out of Mingus Academy, some of them, or, I mean...
Yeah, we would see that as a rare case. Usually when they come out of Mingus Mountain Academy, if they're 18, remember we said they have to be 18 as a minimum qualification to even be in our home. The minors are going back to foster care or their own homes or somewhere else.
So these are young adults.
So these are young adults. And often when they turn 18, as I guess we all can remember, they want to be on their own for a while and they want to see what they can do, think they can make it. And it's often when they maybe turn 20 or 23 or 27 sometimes till they hit that bottom and say, I can't do this my way any longer. I need some help. And that's where we want to be there to provide that help.
That's the Ceylons are coming there on their own, like at the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. We took nobody from the outside that's been convicted, or in other words, the court ordered them, we wouldn't take them.
That's right.
So you're doing the same
That's
thing.
the
basically.
voluntary aspect on both sides.
Thank you.
Exactly. And Mr. Roberts, I just have to add to that Mingus Mountain themselves and their CEQA organization has tried to put girls into this community up to close to a dozen times with no success, because they do put them in an apartment in a home and they leave them alone. That doesn't work. There is no security. These girls come and go as they choose. Most of them get in trouble. Most of them leave. That's exactly why we plan to have a house parent, one or two, and that, again, that lowers the number of the girls, because those house parents are included in that 10. And so that full supervision and having my wife or I be there during the day and people on the weekends and volunteers in and out and neighbors willing to volunteer throughout the day. Most of the time, I would expect there will be, during the day at least, to be more people there, volunteers and adults there, than there will be young women that are in this home. But during the evenings, again, zero tolerance policy. If they're out wandering in the neighborhood, we catch them, they're gone.
Okay, good.
In fact, the security question that you had, I think the other thing is my wife wanted to mention that we don't plan to just issue keys to these girls. We plan, if they come and go, we're going to have a coded door, and that it changes every time a girl leaves. So it's not like they get to just come and go, and anybody, they could give a key to somebody else. That would answer your concerns about safety to the girls, not necessarily to the community.
It's both. But
Both, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a comment. I think the small amount of anxiety we have, or I do, is you guys are kind of flexible, and we're used to the real focused, the YEIs and the other focus groups that are really have what seems to be a harder core idea of how to handle all this stuff. You guys are kind of flexible, and I think it gives everybody a little bit of a little nervous feeling.
I understand.
I appreciate Rick's comments about thanking everybody and thanking the staff and thanking the commission. Now I would like to open up to the audience.
I've got one more thing, if I may. When you guys are when you're over at Mingus, tell Dr. Frankie Gibson that Rick Dusky grilled you all night.
All right, I will. Dr.
Okay.
Frankie and I are good friends too. Thank you.
Okay, so I would open up to the audience. Any comments? Any discussion? Okay, who's first?
I'm Mike Moyer. I own the property adjacent to the church. I've been in business there for 18 years. I have some concerns. My concerns are fairly simple. I have guys coming and going from there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We run a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week business. Hey, guys, I don't need the problem and the more traffic and the things that are going to be involved with this. I've been in business there for 11 years. Talked to many of the commercial neighbors that I have around the place, and they all agree on the same problems that we see. While once again, I love what they're thinking of doing, there's a reason that the Mingus Girls School is up on the mountain. It's pretty simple. So I love what they're doing. I just don't think this is the place for it. The other question that I kind of laid out is, how does the zoning change help the neighborhood? It's a question that I have to lay out for all of you, ladies and gentlemen. How does it help the neighborhood? The other question I lay out is, simply put, would you have it in your neighborhood? Would you have your mother living across the street from this? Now, I love what they're doing. Helping people is a great thing, but in the right context and in the right place. This is a commercial zone, so you guys have the ability to do the right thing right here. You are not hammered by some sort of state law or federal law. We sat here and listened to all this. So it's up to you guys whether this comes into our neighborhood. And one of the things that I ask you is, New Horizons has been there for years. They've been good neighbors, no problems. Nobody in and out. It's an office setting. In that little island of commercial, we have an auto guy. We have 2 air conditioning shops. We have a concrete guy. We have a pretty good plethora of people there. I don't see needing the issue right there. I would help. I would be glad to help. And I would ask the people that are trying to sell this, how does this help the neighborhood? That's the end of my questions. Any questions for me?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mike, you bring up some good questions and some good points. Were your questions ever answered during the community outreach?
We kind of got cut off pretty quickly. I sat through the community outreach meeting. We had a shortened period of time there. At the end, I stated where my stance was. Let's put it that way. And that was pretty much the end of the meeting.
A question?
Mike, is there anything that you think that they could do where you guys could find a compromise or a common ground? They seem pretty compatible and receptive to ideas. Instead of just saying, we don't want them there, is there anything that you could offer that might be a compromise?
Well, I wish in this case I could, because I like what they're doing. I like that they're helping people and people that need help. We love to step up and help out when we can. But in this particular case, I don't see a common ground, unfortunately.
Mr. Chairman.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It seems to me that it would be very difficult to integrate these women into the community if we isolate them on a mountain. This is a transitional thing, and what they're offering is a social experiment, and there's a fair amount of risk involved in that. We have to consider the benefit to the community as a whole.
And I would leave that question open to you. What is the benefit to the community as a whole?
Well, one would hope that it would be productive individuals contributing to the community.
And while I agree with that, is this the place for it? That would be my answer to that question.
I believe we have another question for you, too. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I have a comment to make. First of all, Mountain Valley Church is there. They do counseling and they do service to people that are in need. They do alcoholics, drug addicts. They work with them there. Not that they live there, but they do create ministering programs there for those that are lost. What is to do? It actually will help the community bring in productive people. I don't see a problem with it only because it's in a commercial area. You're down at the other end, well, maybe 5 buildings down from Robert Road, but there's a lot of traffic in that area right there on Robert and Manning and Ashley, but I don't see there'll be a lot of traffic and Newhart are smart because they don't have a lot of automobiles. They transport these people by bus. But what it would do for the community, it would bring people into the community that want to have a new life, a new start. And I'm in business for myself. You're in business. We have to start somewhere. Okay? And what I'm saying to you, I don't see a problem with it myself.
Okay.
And I think they're doing a good thing. And like I said, I worked in the mission in Vegas for 3 months. We never had any problems because we had real good control. Well, we've never had the officers, well, I shouldn't say never, but maybe occasionally have an officer come in and correct a problem. But I think it's good. Like Stepping Stones, I've not read anything in the newspaper or any problems that they have. And they have abused women, and they have to kind of keep them hidden from the spouse or the one that abuses them. So I think this is a good program. The community needs this, and that's my personal opinion.
Okay.
I just want for the record, okay?
I would just ask this. I've already had problems with people digging under my back fence, stealing gas.
Well,
we've already had issues in that neighborhood. Now, as for the church and I have an agreement. I love those people over there. They're great neighbors. Okay? There's no issue with them. This is a 24/7 people living there. That's a different game. And in that, we have security issues. I have another question that kind of popped up. What are we going to do with the smokers?
May I answer that?
Yes.
According, maybe Richard can correct me, we have a state law they can't be smoking within 50 feet of a building.
So, and I ask again, what are you going to do with them?
Well, they should answer that question. I can't.
That's what I'm saying. I had never saw that question.
Just a second. We're going to take a break for about 5 minutes. So can you hold that?
Sure.
And you hold yours. And we're going to declare a recess for 5 minutes.
You got a playground?
No. Did you put this in?
No, but I've worked on this one.
Can you take care of it right now?
Probably.
Okay. Let's get started here. We're going to reconvene October 10th, 2016 Planning and Zoning meeting. And we have questions.
Mike, I just have one question for you.
Okay.
And if I'm saying this wrong, somebody correct me, but realizing that there are 40 already in the town, that one of the residential lots across the street from you, someone could come in and put a drug and alcohol rehab in one of those homes, and they don't have to come through planning and zoning in order to do it. You do realize that that's a potential where your property sits now, because you have R1 property across the street.
This is definitely a possibility, but wow. Well, one of the things that, you know, we have the ability here to make that decision. It's not taken out of our hands or your hands. Let me rephrase that. The other question I would have is this. Do we open up Pandora's box here? Let's say, in a terrible world, that this venture does not go through, fails. Zoning is changed. We can't change it back. Now I have a drug rehab home that comes in the backside of me. Now I can't stop across the street. I get that. I understand that. But as a commercial business, you have to see what I'm looking at.
I just wanted to make sure we were on the same boat there.
Yeah, I understand. After listening to this, I had no idea what state law was until I sat down and listened to you guys earlier. Thank you for bringing that out, by the way. I was, okay.
Gary. Go ahead, Gary.
Mike, your concern is when you left conversation about breaking in the back and stealing something to that effect.
Well, we have a common alley behind us.
Okay, and your concern is that this might bring in people with criminal activities?
Well, it's very simple. It's not so much criminal activity. I get the crazy ex-boyfriend showing up out of nowhere. I have some of my guys working at 10 o'clock at night going to pick up parts, and now I have a problem there. That's what I'm worried about.
I don't think they have that late of visitation. Now, that's the question that needs to be answered, what their visitation is, if there is any. What is, I mean, I'm directing this to Smart Group.
Donna?
Because I can understand your concern.
Okay. There are no boys allowed on the property. No. Well, yes, we will know because there's a house parent there, and the doors are locked. There will be no boys on the property.
Okay.
If the girls want to date, we will teach them appropriate dating. The boy will pick them up, take them out on a date, bring them back at an appropriate time. And then I also wanted to address the smoking question that he had. It is a non-smoking facility. We will not even allow vaporing. Okay. If they have to quit, they can wear patches, but we will not allow smoking.
Okay.
Or drinking, or drugs, or anything else.
What about smoking outside?
No, they're not allowed to smoke. That's a habit they have to quit. Because one of the things that you find with these girls is they can't pay their bills, but they can smoke. So we have to teach them appropriate budgeting and priorities. The smoking goes. If they want our help, they got to do it right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we've done everything we can on you. Yep. Are you okay? Okay. And everybody else? Any other comments?
There's a lady there.
I had a question of staff real quick, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Since we are looking at a zoning map change, are we looking at hard zoning, Richard, or could this ever be changed back?
Could it be conditional?
Conditional. I just want to clarify that for the record.
On a permit.
No, you can't conditionally zone this based on conditions that would regulate the occupancy of a group home. Can't do that. As soon as it goes to a residential zoning category, they are exempt by state law. And there's a clear delineation between those two. So you couldn't say we can only permit 5 people and we'll see how it goes. Won't work. Can't do that. Can't do that by law.
and to the question that was asked, if, for instance, this venture fails, and at that point in time, still because of regulations and so forth, this could not be, someone couldn't come back before us and change it back to a commercial operation.
They could, yeah.
They could?
But
okay.
They could also, again, exercise any option under an RS use district that is permitted by right, including the exemption, and that would involve up to 10 unrelated people. Again, that's not something that was drafted at the town of Prescott Valley, but it's something we have to deal with, and we have to be consistent. So, again, to repeat, you cannot conditionally, let's get our toe in the water and see how it works. You can't do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I would entertain any other comments from the audience.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if by rezoning a specific property for one individual, if we're opening the door to future things of having to rezone for just one property.
Well,
how dangerous is this, or have we done it in the past and it's worked out fine?
Well, you've looked at changes in the community and addressed those changes as it relates to land use. The Board of Adjustments has looked at interpretations based on new activities that weren't contemplated when our zoning ordinance was adopted, new technologies that need to be put in play. One that I use oftentimes is powder coating, which at one time was considered painting, and there's nothing remotely like painting and the caustic events associated with painting and explosions. So yes, the Planning and Zoning Commission, that's your purpose, is to determine if change is warranted, and if so, what that change should be, and you again recommend that to the town council. This one is pretty sticky because I think are strong points on both sides.
Yeah, it's troubling.
I will say, and forgive me for saying this to the applicant, I like rigidity oftentimes. I like consistency, and I'm concerned about people's good intentions only, because I haven't seen that, we've done this 10 times before and it's worked really well. Not to say I'm afraid of that, but that does give rise to this professional's concern.
It's a social experiment, and they can be beautiful and they can be disastrous. We just have to
well put
make our choice.
You flowered that a lot better than you would. Okay, ma'am, come on up and see.
A little nervous, so please bear with me.
So am I.
Neighbor across the street.
Yeah, please step into the mic.
Oh, your name, please.
And step to the microphone, please.
Okay, my name is Patricia Lorette.
Okay.
I am the neighbor across the street.
Okay.
My next door neighbor is not happy with this project either, by the way, but she had to go to the doctor tonight, so she wasn't able to come.
Okay.
I'm really concerned. I think what they're trying to do is admirable. I have 2 daughters myself, so I know how I'd feel about it. However, my husband and I are elderly. Our address is 8086. Their address is 8085. I know that they don't want boyfriends and things like that coming when they're not supposed to. But there are situations that arise. It can be volatile situations. I don't want anybody coming to my door looking for a young woman that's across the street. We're defenseless, basically. At the meeting a few weeks ago with Mr. Houston, somebody asked about the success rate of the program of the girls or the people that he worked with. He said he thought it was about 40%. That doesn't make me confident about this. Having only volunteers there does not make me confident, especially at night. One volunteer is what we were told would be there at night. That's scary. I spoke to somebody that works with troubled girls, and they told me about different things that they watch for, the different restrictions that they place, watching out that no alcohol is brought in, checking the girls for drug use, that sort of thing. And these are professional people that are doing this, that I talk to. These people are volunteers. Their hearts are in the right place, but I really question how safe our situation will be. We've already had problems in that neighborhood. My husband had somebody throw a rock through the window in his truck last year. About 2 months ago, somebody knocked our mailbox down. My husband, who is not in very good shape, had to try to replace that. We're really afraid of having something brought in that's going to cause us even more problems. It's an experiment. That's the other thing. When we talked to Mr. Houston, and I think that was brought out tonight too, they've never done this kind of thing before. So how do they know what's going to happen? We're sitting across the street from a test site where there can be potential problems. That's frightening. I don't know what else to tell you, except to please consider this very carefully.
You did a great job. You did a great job.
Thank
Good job.
you. I'm shaking like a...
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would entertain anybody else from the audience. Go ahead.
Rod Silverman. I own a house directly across from the
Okay, you're kind of tall, so you're going to have to help us here. And say your name again.
Rod Silverman.
Oh, okay. That was an easy one. I lost it.
8101 Ashley, directly across from the church.
Okay.
I was wondering, could or will the rezoning or the type of facility or program like SMART moving in, can that or will that affect the property value of any of our homes or possibly the property taxes or homeowners insurance due to the type of program, the risk of the troubled or dysfunctional girls that will be in there? And I think what Mr. Morris was referring to as far as the boys showing up, of course it wouldn't, we're talking about like a jealous ex-boyfriend that could show up unexpectedly and cause a scene or even possibly worse, or be loitering around, stalking, maybe vandalizing or breaking into any of our homes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would entertain anybody else from the audience. Any other questions, comments from the commission?
Well, I'm not sure that we can answer Mr. Silverman's questions. I'm not in a position to answer the property value or the insurance questions. I just honestly don't know.
It's a good point. It's a good point to bring up and put it in the queue that we're working under right now.
I chaired this commission for, I don't know, a while, a long time. And I've been on it for a long time and other commissions. And this may be one of the most difficult situations that I've ever found myself in having to make a decision that I hope will benefit the community, so to speak. The intent is good. The laws say that, like Mike, we were talking about there, they can move a drug rehab facility in right next door to you or across the street or wherever, and there's nothing we can do about that. But we have the right to stop these folks from trying to do something that is both Christian and I think in goodwill. And do we make that decision to do that, to stop them? The theory of the possibility of people having unwelcome visitors and things, I sincerely believe is real. And it worries me that there are volunteers that are there that might have to accommodate that need. People that are well-intentioned but not well-trained for handling that kind of a situation that might occur. It can call 911, of course, but that may be too late to solve a situation. I don't know what the answer to that part is, but I think the probability of a problem like that is real. In my opinion, I'm really torn on this. I think another thing is that the location of this, while it may be an ideal building for your needs, it appears it is. The location of it is really kind of, I don't want to say out in the middle of nowhere because it isn't, but it's in a remote location, really. There's nothing around there that the girls can go to, do, or whatever. It'd almost be better if it was closer to town, I think. So that presents an issue in my mind. So I've said my piece, John. I don't know what else to say.
You beat us up tonight.
Pardon me?
You beat us up tonight.
No, I wasn't trying to beat anybody up. I think it's just a real
yes, it's a
serious question, and we're taking a position that do we set a precedence, as she mentioned? I don't know. There are a lot of ifs.
Yes, there are.
You know, we're dealing with an organization that's well-intentioned, but it has individual track record, but as an organization, doesn't have any in this type of environment. And do we take the chance of changing our environment, if you will, to accommodate the experiment? Tough.
Thank you, Dick. Richard. Okay, any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I came here tonight expecting to vote for this. I felt that perhaps it would make a good transition from commercial to residential. But as I think about it and the concerns of the neighborhood and thinking about what are the girls going to do, where will they go, I would really like to see this in a more central location. I'm somewhat averse to changing the zoning. As well-intentioned as this is, I would like to see this facility.
Yes, and again, I feel the same way. I love entrepreneurs. I love people that'll come out and really, throw themselves on the line. But I think the proximity to the residential area is too tough for me to consider right now. And I agree that we should probably look at this, as Arda said, and maybe trying to find a place for them that's a little bit more apropos for what they want to do. That's my comments. Now I would entertain a motion, please.
With that, Mr. Chairman. What?
This really hurts me to do this, but there's no, I'd like to make a comment on my motion, is that there's no track record. And I can understand I have a real concern about the neighborhood. So I'm going to make a motion to decline ZMC 16-007.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Then we would entertain a motion, please. We would roll call, please.
Commissioner Rutherford?
No. Oh,
Thanks a lot.
Yes, my vote is yes. I am voting for the motion.
Commissioner Rankin?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Dusky?
Yes.
Commissioner Zurcher?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Dreves?
Yes.
Chairperson Yeater?
Yes. And with that, our next agenda item is call to the public. Would you handle that, Matt?
Yes. Call to public, consideration and discussion of comments from the public. Those wishing to address the Planning and Zoning Commission need not request permission in advance. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later date.
Okay.
Mike Flannery. First of all, I want to thank you all for your thoughtful and considerate consideration of that last motion. But one of the things that I find troubling is, and you are in particular put in a box here, because it was a, if you will, excuse me, damned if you do and damned if you don't position. Because on one hand, if you didn't approve the rezoning, then they could do an office there and move across the street and open up a group home. And that to me is, you know, as long as I was in government, they kept on saying that zoning was there to protect the citizen from the surrounding events. And yet, when something like this happens, it seems like it's there not to protect them, but to be used against them. Because if you did go one way, then the citizens in the surrounding area were going to get harmed. And if you did go with the rezoning, or excuse me, if you didn't go with it, then they could move a group home in, which to me is like, why would you allow anybody to just move a group home into a residential area without even having to come through you at all? And
because of the laws that we don't govern.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, no, wait a minute. That's not 100% true. We have a representative from our area that has passed a law in this state that does take care of that very situation. What we have is our staff has not chosen to go forward with that. However, I'm sitting in a neighborhood that almost had a group home involved in it. If the staff would go forward and adopt that, then we don't have to go down that path again. So I'm just saying, enlighten staff, because it's not going to be the end of it.
And Mike, you are referring to Noel Campbell's legislation, is that correct?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Well, as usual, Mike, your input is always valuable, and we thank you very much. Okay, nothing else? I'm going to adjourn the call. Oh, I already did the call. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to close this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.